Hey, I'm Andrew with 10-Minute Therapy. Over our last couple of videos, we've been looking at cognitive behavioral therapy, and more specifically, we've examined a number of thought problems that we run into as people, what we often refer to as cognitive distortions. In today's video, we're going to go into a more practical direction. How do I correct my thinking? How do I change cognitive distortions? How do I rewire my brain to begin to think differently? So, without further ado, let's start the clock. We'll get right to it. So over our last few videos, we've examined CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. We've looked at the connections between our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, and we've looked at more specifically what we refer to as cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions are not a diagnosis, they are examples of faulty thinking. They're essentially thinking errors. And the truth is we're all guilty of them from one time to another. And so what we want to do today is actually take a step back from some of the teaching and examining common issues and really start to answer the question, what do I do about that? How do I make changes in my own thinking and disengage from unhealthy patterns of thinking in order to then push forward and engage in healthier ways of living that are going to be more productive in the way we think? And so we want to start by sort of breaking this into steps, if you will. The first step that we really want to look at is that at some level, we have to discontinue engaging in negative loops of thinking. We have to discontinue engaging in cognitive distortions. Now, if that seems a little too on the nose, a little too obvious, let's stop and really examine what we're saying here. You see, there's an old adage in our country that we teach even to young children. We say practice makes perfect. When we have a child that wants to play basketball, we teach them practice makes perfect. You got to get out there, you've got to practice your layup, you got to practice your form, you got to practice your free throws, and you practice. You're reinforcing muscle memory, and eventually these skills become more natural and fluid. But the truth is, there's something else that's happening when we practice. We're actually creating neural pathways. What we mean by that is we are connecting neurons in the brain, and the more we engage in a pattern, the stronger that pathway gets. So think of it like this. Let me take a piece of yarn and just imagine that this is one neuron in the brain and this is another, right? When we engage in practicing basketball, we start to connect these two. And when we do it again, it gets stronger. And with every practice, we're reinforcing this pattern in the brain. And over time, as we attend practice every day and we shoot free throws and we work on dribbling and we work on our form and we play actual games to get better practice, and then we engage in scrimmages, and then we work on more advanced skills, and then we practice all kinds of other basketball skills, what we're eventually doing is creating a very strong connection between the neurons in the brain. This neural pathway has been reinforced to be very strong. And so practice makes perfect. But what we may not realize is that in some ways, we do the same exact thing in our thinking. So let's take, for example, something like what-if thinking. And imagine someone, maybe yourself, who engages in what-if thinking. You engage in this pattern where your brain can just run down these spirals of thinking. What if this bad thing happens? What if that happens? What if this happens? Well, like anything else, practice makes perfect. So I go to bed one night and I have this thought, what if I get really sick tomorrow and then I can't go to work? And what if when I can't go to work, I lose my sick days? And what if I use enough sick days that eventually I run out of time and I'm not getting paid? And what if I don't get paid and then I can't pay my bills? And if I can't pay my bills, what if I lose my house? And if I lose my house, what if I have nowhere to live? And if I don't have nowhere to live, what if I lose my job? What if my family disowns me? What if it causes issues in my friend group? What if then I can't find another job? What would I do then? What if I get really sick and I don't have the money for health insurance? And over in these what if thoughts, we've inadvertently practiced this negative loop of thinking that's created now a very, very strong neural connection. And so while it might seem a little bit on the nose when I say we have to stop engaging in this type of thinking, that's the first step. The truth is what we've done is create a very strong neural connection. And what we need to do is actually disengage from this. And like a muscle, when I stop engaging in the what-if thinking, it starts to atrophy. And the neural connection there starts to get a little bit weaker. It starts to unravel some of this. And over time, what happens is eventually this atrophies to a point where it no longer has this very strong automaticity to it, but instead it is atrophied and withered to a place where I no longer get caught in what-if thinking. So step number one, we have to commit to a process wherein we stop engaging in the distorted thinking patterns, in the negative thinking patterns. We have to stop reinforcing them and practicing them. Now, you might ask, okay, but practically, how do I do that? Well, to take it a step farther, let's just start with the word stop. Think of it like this. If we want to stop engaging in a negative thought pattern, what-if thinking, catastrophizing, mental filtering, any of the many and more that we've discussed, what if I started with the word stop? What if I started with an awareness and I notice the first time that I'm doing it, what if this happens? What if this bad thing happens? What if, and I go, whoa, 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 there it is again. I'm doing that thing I do. I'm spiraling. And I just say to myself, stop. And instead of reinforcing now, I've at the very least stopped reinforcing. So first we have to have an awareness. We have to commit to stopping practicing these patterns of thought. And then secondly, we go to this word stop. It's a really powerful word when we let it be. When I say to myself, stop, no, I'm not doing that again. I'm not practicing that pattern of thought again. No, I'm not engaging in what-if thinking. When I notice my mind jumping off in a mental filtering, today was a terrible day and nothing good happened, I say, whoa, stop. And we follow it up with, that's not true. See, we examined with cognitive distortions that really they're just these loops of things we've imagined and preconceived, but they're not real. And so what if we go to the word stop and we follow it up with, that's not true. That's not real. We shine the light of truth onto the lies that we've agreed with through this type of thinking. And in doing so, every time I do that, I notice that what-if thinking starts again, and I go, no, stop. I'm not doing that. That's not real. And maybe even a few minutes later, it starts up again. Oh, man, what if I get really sick again? Nope, stop. I'm not doing that. That's not real. I start to catastrophize and blow it out of proportion. I say, stop. I'm not going to do that this time. My boss sends me an email, and instead of my mind running down, oh my gosh, I'm going to get fired, this is really bad, I go, whoa, stop, hold up, that's not real. I don't know that that's true. I start engaging in black and white thinking, and I think, oh, I'm a failure. Whoa, stop, that's not real. Every time that I practice stopping that loop of thought, and I refuse to engage in it, not only am I not reinforcing it, but now we're letting this pattern of thought atrophy. We're unwiring it, essentially. We're letting this neural connection that was so strong from many practices and repetitions, and we're starting to disengage it a little bit. And now the new practice that's being made perfect is actually the not engaging in the negative loop of thinking. And so we start with a commitment. I need to stop practicing and reinforcing these bad habits and bad patterns. Number two, I respond with stop. That's not real. That's not true. But now we need to do one more thing in addition to that, right? In addition to not practicing and reinforcing this pattern and starting to unwire it by not engaging in it and stopping it instead of practicing it, we need to go one step farther than that. Back in the 90s, there was a big campaign against smoking cigarettes, right? And so they started to promote to people that you could go through several steps and break a pattern of smoking addiction, but they would tell people things like, you've got to replace that habit with something like chewing gum. Or they would show in movies sometimes someone would be chewing on a toothpick and he'd say, I'm trying to quit smoking, right? Because they were tapping into something important. When we discontinue a bad habit, oftentimes a void is left. And if we're not careful, that void's going to get refilled with the same exact habit that I've been working so hard to break. And so what we want to do is fill that void with something positive. So what if instead of the lie of negative thinking, I tell myself, stop, that's not true, and I replace that with something positive? I take, for example, someone who maybe has engaged in a lot of self-hatred or negative thoughts about themselves. Right? Every time they mess up, they think, oh, I'm a failure. I'm terrible. No one likes me. Everyone's judging me. I don't have any friends. I'm not going to make it anywhere in life. I don't know why I'm even bothering. People, they just judge me. They don't sit with me. No one talks to me. I have no hope. I have no future. All these negative thoughts just around and around and around. And we've got this very, very tightly wound neural connection now that is very strong. It's been reinforced many times. And now this person says, I'm going to commit to not doing that anymore. I will no longer practice reinforcing this thought. So the next time they notice themselves thinking, oh, I'm such a loser, they go, no, stop. That's not true. And they start to unwind that wire, that neural connection. And in response to that's not true, they say, you know what, I do have value. And the next time that thought creeps back up, oh, I'm such a failure. No, stop, wait, that's not true. You know what, I'm actually really good at my job. And the next day when that thought creeps back in because they make a mistake, oh man, I'm such an idiot. No, stop, that's not real. You know what? I'm not an idiot. I have a college education and I've worked really hard to get where I am. And when they start to engage in that thinking of people judging me, it's like, no, stop, that's not true. I don't actually know what people are thinking. That's the truth. The truth is I have friends who I enjoy spending time with. The truth is I have family members that I love and who love me in return. And so over and over, we stop reinforcing the negative pattern. We tell ourselves, stop. We say it's not real. And as we unwire this old neural connection, we replace it with something positive, something good. And now we're practicing that, this positive affirmation of self and this shining of truth onto the lies that we have formerly agreed with. And slowly but surely this neural connection unwires and we become free of the lies and the things that we have believed. This is a process that anybody can practice. Let me just say this. There is hope for those of us that struggle with cognitive distortions. There is hope for those of us that wrestle with negative thinking. But you don't have to walk through this process on your own. My encouragement to you is this. If you heard something today that hit home, go talk to a counselor, talk to a therapist, have that person in your corner who can step by step walk you through and help you to make sense of this until you reach that place of peace and freedom where you are no longer under the weight of the lies and the things that you've believed. So as you can see, I went way over our time, but I hope this is helpful. I hope it's encouraging. Share it with someone that it might help. But in the meantime, I'm Andrew with 10 Minute Therapy. God bless.